There's an idea that I want to share with you called gravitropic. And this is a phenomenon in nature that is basically this idea that as a tree is growing up, it is also growing down. So growing up towards the light is phototropic. Growing down, rooting deeply and gathering nutrients and resources from the soil is called gravitropic. And this helps anchor the tree. Whereas this other idea of phototropic is the branches seeking light, stretching upwards. And so what's happening with the tree is it's growing both up and down at the same time. And this is how the feminine works too. This is how women work. I would venture to say this is also how men work, but we're talking about women because this is a freely feminine podcast. So that's what we're going to talk about. You are naturally exactly like a tree. You're growing up and out and reaching and rising at the same time as you're rooting deeply. But if you are not rooting deeply, when the storms of life come, girl, they're going to knock you over. And I'm saying that from an arborist's wife perspective. My husband is a tree technician. The ones that fall over, the types of trees that I'm not allowed to plant near our house, are the ones that have a really shallow root structure, because those are the ones that will just fall over at any given moment and you never really know when they're going to go, and it'll just uproot the entire tree and the whole thing will fall over, and they can get huge and do that anyway because the roots don't go down deeply. And when we hear about the feminine in a lot of the like goddess spirituality kind of area of business right now, it talks a lot about the feminine rising, a lot about the feminine rising, but it does not talk a lot about the feminine rooting. And I want you to hear that you have to rise and you also have to root. You go down deeply, deeply in order to nourish yourself, in order to anchor yourself and create stability. The masculine quality of structure and support is not the only place we get stability. We get stability by who we are, as long as we recognize that's one of our qualities too. And so a lot of times when I see women who've been in the self-development realm for a long time, the thing that they continuously run into is they're all about higher levels of consciousness and accessing their emotions and, going on whatever retreats and things where they're getting all of these like woo-woo things just dumped into them. But they don't understand that they are naturally rooted and they have to have this gravitropic process in order to stay nourished, in order to stay steady, in order to not lose themselves in the self-development process. Ironically, if you continue on just a self-development process without actually understanding how to root yourself, you will lose your actual identity in who you are. It's like letting go of a balloon. It just keeps going up and up and up and up. And it's like, well, where did it go? That's what happens to you as a woman if you don't understand that you are gravitropic, that you root down at the same time as you extend up. And without rooting down, you cannot go out and you cannot produce fruit. And so there are a few different ways that this might show up. One is biologically, from the perspective of your cycle. You have two phases that are gravitropic and you have two phases that are phototropic. You have two phases that are inward and down. These are your follicular or your luteal and your menstrual phase. So kind of your inner autumn and then your inner winter when you're bleeding. Both of these are when your body brings all of its nutrients back into itself, just like the trees do in the autumn and in the winter. All of the nutrients come back into the trunk of the tree in order to nourish the tree and send those nutrients down deep in order to survive the harsh winter, in order to continue growing the tree, in order to make sure that it is strong. You have two phases in your menstrual cycle in order to support you in strengthening yourself and creating more nourishment, more nutrients, and to understand and to be able to reflect and to be able to actually have a self-development process that is integrated, not just informed. So you have two phases. You have your luteal and you have your menstrual phase. Then you have two phases that are phototropic. It's external energy. These are your follicular and your ovulatory phases. This is when you are ready to burst forth, you are ready to produce fruit, you are ready to expand and grow, and it's all outward energy. This is phototropic. So you need both. Remember a few episodes back, I talked about this idea, this truth, this natural principle of polarity, that it's not an equal balance, it's equilibrium. And you need both of two poles in order to work together, in order to create results, for co-creation to happen, whether that's male and female for a baby to happen, whether that is masculine and feminine in order for a business to happen, whether that is phototropic and gravitropic in order for a tree to actually be produced, for fruit to happen. These are all similar concepts. These are all parallels of the same concept of polarity. And so you need both. If you have just one, you're going to end up feeling maybe anxious. You're going to end up feeling like your emotions are taking over. You're going to end up feeling like you don't have the ability to get clarity because there's so much movement happening up here. All of your energy is up here. If you have too much gravitropic, right, and you're not doing self-development, gravitropic might look like more isolation. It might look like low energy. It might look like only working on your internal projects and never presenting them to the public. It can look like a couple different things. So you have inner work and you have outer work, and both of them are really important. And so if you only have this outer work, then you don't typically have the nutrients to then come and create, and you might be lacking actual inspiration. You might be lacking the ability to execute. You might be lacking a whole bunch of different things. If you're lacking gravitropic, or if you're too far in gravitropic, if you're too internal, then you may not be able to express it. It might weigh you down. It might make you feel too heavy. It might make you feel like uninspired. It might make you feel like you are just doing one thing over and over again. There's no fresh energy there. So you want to make sure that you're bringing both of these concepts in. And the way that you can do that is by honoring the energy that's happening in your cycle every month, because you have these distinct, your cycle is split into 4 phases, but it's split into 2 halves with 2 phases each. So you have a yin phase, and you have a yin kind of half, and you have a yang half. So your yin half is much more internal. It's reflective. It's that luteal and that menstrual phase. It's all about peering inwards, looking into the darkness and seeing the stars. You have to have that. But then in your yang phase, this is more of that like active energy, that energy that gets you going. It's that fire, and you need that too. So I want you to be aware that you are like a tree. You are both gravitropic and you are phototropic. And don't get lost in the idea of the divine feminine rising and lose the access to the deeply rooted. This is sometimes the ancestral wisdom. This is your intuitive knowing. This is where somatic work is really powerful, because it accesses the body, and the body is the way that we anchor ourselves to the physical realm. Whereas self-development tends to happen more in the esoteric. It tends to be more the nuanced stuff, and it can sometimes lead us astray. It can sometimes be all about the emotions, and it's not always truth. Sometimes it's more perception, because it's very mentally focused. The body doesn't lie. The body does not lie. The body is constantly in its best effort protecting you. And it is constantly asking you to connect to nature and to connect with the physical realm. And so that is one of the best ways that you can continue to root if you're feeling like you are too much in your up here kind of phototropic sense. Go ground yourself. Go stand on the ground with bare feet. That's one of the easiest things you can do. A saltwater bath, one of the best things you can do, right? Honoring your menstrual phase, resting, reflecting, taking time for yourself to really journal things out, to see what's there. Instead of constantly pouring in new information, allow yourself to integrate what's actually there. This is where we get lost a lot of times in our constant quest for more information. We buy all the courses, we do all the things, but we have no idea how to actually implement it in our businesses or in our lives. That's too phototropic. It's not enough gravitropic. We don't have any way to actually materialize that, create function with it, and actually do something with that information, because it's not integrated and embodied. So allow yourself to have both. Allow yourself this integration of both phototropic and gravitropic, so that you can actually create the fruit that you desire to create. That is all I have for right now. I'll chat with you on the next one.